Hello and welcome back to Learn It from a Layman. I am Carl Christensen, joined today by Matt and Tim the Bad Habit Cox. Tim doesn't have a chance to respond because right now he's taking care of his children and will be in and out of the podcast, but he did hear it, which is the important thing. Today we're going to be talking about some interesting facts and specifically ones related to some of the ones I'm sharing are specifically related to the fact that this is a new year. So we've got New Year facts, kind of. But we have been off a couple weeks, so we're just jumping right back into our fact-based podcast. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with the fact that this, once again, today is the 6th of January, 2024. So you're 6 days into your New Year's resolutions, and some of you, I'm sure, are finding that these things are challenging. I was doing research into habits and what makes and breaks a habit. And I think most of us have heard a certain number of days it takes for habit forming. But I did the research to find out what amount of time is necessary to break or make a new habit. And there's a range, as there is in all of these things, but it appears to be somewhere between a month to just over 2 months in order to either break a bad habit or make a good habit, which in some ways are the same thing. So if you are a week in and you're struggling, just know that you're going to continue struggling for another at least 3, probably 7 weeks, and that you should continue, as long as you've made good goals, to stick with it until you've created a habit that will aid you in your development going forward. So this fact is 30 to 66 days to make or break a new habit, and continue with your goals. I've got another follow-up on that, Tim, before I let you sneak in, or Matt, if you've got one. But a lot of people around the New Year's make goals, New Year's resolutions to become fit or eat better, something along those lines. I know one that had been something I'd been considering for a long time. And for those of you out there that are involved in sporting in any fashion, or just general physical activity, you may have wondered if you do cardio, or if you lift weights, or if you want to do both, which one should you do first if you're doing them at the same time? Let's say you go to the gym, or if you got a workout facility, something at home, should you lift weights first or do cardio first? And you'll find a lot of different information out there, but the most recent information that I was able to find said that lifting weights first is better for peak physical performance. For those of you for whom peak physical performance isn't exactly what you're going for, I would ask, why not? Because, I mean, if you're going to work on it, might as well do the most you can. So as much as it probably doesn't matter, except in the margins, if you're an Olympic athlete, for example, the reality is that I'm going to read the quotation here from a scientist. It says, research suggests that for these high-end exercisers, concurrent training, that means weight training and cardio training, may slightly inhibit improvement in aerobic capacity. More likely, it can hinder gains in muscular strength and power development, and to a lesser degree, muscle growth. This phenomenon is called the interference effect. It shows that most and well-trained athletes undertaking high volumes of both aerobic and resistance exercise. So the short of that is, if you're doing both, sometimes they can interfere. And along those lines, that's why the research suggests that if you're going to do both at the same time, you should start with your resistance training first. So given research findings about concurrent training, it makes sense to do resistance exercise first, or to train first in the type of exercise that is most important to your performance goals. Additionally, if possible, elite athletes should give their bodies a break of at least 3 hours in between resistance and aerobic. Though for the layman out there, among which I am, I do not have 2 training sessions a day though. So I do them back to back, which is why I've always been wondered what's best. So apparently lift weights and then run is slightly better depending on what your workout goals are, but the most recent research suggests that you're just going to benefit from better overall performance if you do resistance training first. Any insights into that, Matt or Tim?
No, it sounds like a fascinating fact.
And I'm coming off of mute to say, I'll just kind of add something that you talked about forming habits and the time frame needed. One tip that I've heard, I think from a couple of different places, and you'll probably hear it different ways, but it's like the 2-minute rule. It's this idea that the trickiest part of when you're trying to establish any habit or new routine is the beginning. The most resistance is at the beginning. Once you start doing something, you're doing it. So, for example, if I want to get in the habit of running, then one tip is to not focus on, I'm going to go out and run every day, but maybe instead say, I'm going to put on my running shoes every afternoon, or whenever, whatever time is best or most likely for me to be able to run. And if you focus on just getting through the first 2 minutes of any task, that's the most difficult part, and where you have the most resistance. And so when I was trying to exercise regularly, I started small. I said, I'm just going to do 5 minutes, and I found that was sustainable for me. I could manage 5 minutes a day, and so start small. Don't start big. You want to build up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, take bite-sized chunks worth, and that, I mean, no, that's not even just exercising. That's any type of habit that you're trying to form. If you go 0 to 60, you'll find that you're going back to 0 pretty quick. Okay, so before I have Matt or Tim chime in with an interesting fact, I wanted to give a little bit of podcast update, because there's 2 things, and I appreciate we get relatively routine comments now on our podcast, and I appreciate anyone that's taken the time to do so. Positive comments or critical comments, I'm fine with either. I do find it. Well, I mean, I ignore the critical ones. I take down name and number, and I try to hunt them down online, but I don't do that. I promise. No, I do appreciate critical or complimentary comments. The irony of them, sometimes the last couple ones that have been critical say that we're not very funny. Okay, two things. First, I never said I was funny. And number 2, the attempts at humor are the podcasts where people vote with their feet and listen the most. So while I don't think I'm particularly funny, and Tim is only, somewhere in the margins, and Matt is usually otherwise occupied. What
does that even mean?
You're too busy to be funny. The podcasts where we've had the most success are ones where we banter a bit. So as much as those of you that have commented that you'd prefer that we just stick to the material, the reality is the vast majority of people apparently disagree. So I do appreciate your feedback, but apparently the majority of those that listen to the podcast prefer a tad bit of banter as far as voting with a number of downloads is concerned. But I appreciate everyone that listens, and hopefully you do get something out of it, if only the names that I called Tim.
That's right.
Okay, next fact about something. Tim or Matt, do you have a fact that you'd like to share?
I've got one. I just read this the other day. So the term lynch law or lynch mob is, taken for granted, at least in American speech. Its origins apparently go back to the Revolutionary War era. Again, this is the American Revolutionary War. when I guess a judge or an official in Virginia, he was a patriot, and in other words, in favor of the American cause, and he would uh, well, in any case, apparently it was pretty hardcore, and you didn't really have to do much to other than be a Tory or a supporter of the British cause to get in his crosshairs, and he would, um, well, to say the least, would put he would not handle you kindly in court, and then um, it would so happen that mobs of patriots would storm the the property of the person or whatever, and so but this was kind of extra legal stuff, and so it became known as lynch law, and a lynch mob, and so the at least in America the term for any time an extra legal mob executing its own brand of justice without without actually following the procedures of the law came to be known as lynch law, and named after this guy Lynch. So there you go.
Now known as the Twitter mob.
Twitter.
You know.
That's right. Yeah, we'll see if it rebrands here.
Okay. I've got another fact or two, Matt. If anything comes up, Matt, you just let us know.
Okay.
I'm reading I'm kind of reading. I've always wondered, and I'd like people to give me feedback on whether audiobook reading is reading, or if, like, when I say I've read something and I only audiobooked it, does that count?
No, it absolutely does not count. It's not bad. You can still do it, but it's not reading. You're listening.
That's like the vast
listen to an
majority of things I've
audiobook.
ever read.
So
Okay,
you have to use other verbs. There's audiobook, of course, which is now a verb, or you could say I perused it. That I guess implies reading, but not as definitively as read.
I listened to all of Les Mis, and you're telling me I don't get credit for that?
Correct. You listened to it. You don't. In fact, Les Mis
incredibly painful.
is a stage play opera thing. You don't read that anyway.
Yeah.
Les Mis was a book first.
Whatever. Now it's a film.
That is true. Hugh Jackman.
Anyway, no, unless you're trying to get like social media credit, there's no reason for you to not use the right verb.
It's like that song in Les Mis. Do you read the people sing? See, it's
I don't think that's how it goes.
Yeah, and that's just offensive.
Okay. The actual fact here from my audiobook listen, then, halfway through The Destiny of the Republic, which is a great historical biography of James A. Garfield, I learned a fair amount about, obviously James A. Garfield, but there was a quote from Abraham Lincoln about the Civil War that really, I feel like I should have known it beforehand, and maybe I'd heard it, but it hadn't stuck with me. During the war, Kentucky was incredibly important during the American Civil War. And Abraham Lincoln is quoted as having said, "I hope to have God on my side, but I must have Kentucky." And so, obviously said, as a little satire, but it was incredibly important. And James A. Garfield led one of the more important battles of the Civil War, one little-known Battle of Middle Creek in Kentucky, and won it for the Union, which was critical, obviously, in maintaining Kentucky, which was critical in winning the war, as the quote by Abraham Lincoln indicates. So I hadn't previously been aware of the importance of Kentucky in the Civil War, which tells you potentially that I don't know my Civil War history well enough. But obviously, Abraham Lincoln was aware of the importance of that state in the winning of the Civil War for the Union side, which, by the way, is Union side, the good guys, the guys fighting against slavery. So, it was an important time in American history, and Battle of Middle Creek in Kentucky was a big part of it. Did you know that, Tim?
I did not. And I didn't know until you told me that James Garfield was actually pretty cool. Didn't you say that he actually didn't want to be president?
Yeah, that is incredible. I want to like let people listen to it in the book, because I'm trying to
Don't
remember the
read
name
it.
of the
Listen to it.
the name of
Yeah,
the biography.
exactly.
Okay, whatever. The biography is written masterfully. Um, I'm trying to look up the name of the author. Oh, Candace Millard. She does an
Yeah.
amazing job. And so I kind of want to let people, but yes, to just jump the gun, he didn't want to be president. He did not want to be nominated, and was against his will, which can you imagine these days? And additionally, one of the offhanded facts in the book said something along the lines of the whole campaign expenditure, and I don't think it was for his run to president, but it was like his run to Congress, totaled something less than $1,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Which I suppose
So,
even then was not all that much.
even then, right? Even then, that's nowadays it's tens of millions of dollars. I guess that's for
Yeah, add
bigger
a zero or
national.
two onto that.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Yes, lots of money expend these days to try to get marketing. But
So while we're on a Candace Millard kick, I'm going to chime in with another fun fact. So I actually read a book by Candace Millard that my wife got for me after she read the same book as you did. I think she may have actually read it though, Carl. Not to throw shade at you.
A little bit of shade.
we're not throwing audiobook shade around here. We're not doing it.
But she wrote another one called Hero of the Empire about Winston Churchill. It's called the making of Winston Churchill. And it's kind of interesting. Everyone knows about Winston Churchill as an older man, when he was, of course, instrumental in leading the British and, standing up against Hitler and the Nazis. But Winston Churchill, had a long career, and his beginnings, actually, he started off as he was kind of this actually pretty high profile person. He was the son of like the high ranking British official in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and his mother was actually a famous American actress. And but anyways, he was the second son, and so his father was second. Anyways, he wasn't like, as far as British nobility, getting anywhere, so he had to kind of do things on his own. In any case, he made a name for himself as a writer, and he was actually sent to South Africa during the Boer War at the beginning of the 20th century to cover that war, and he got captured by the South Africans and actually escaped capture and became he had this kind of crazy journey back to escape capture, and anyways, he became this instant national hero, and that's kind of how he started his political career. After that, he ran for parliament and became became the politician he eventually became. But it was all based on his going to South Africa, getting captured, and then this daring escape that took weeks of traveling through enemy territory and all this stuff. And anyways, it was kind of cool. Who knew? Winston Churchill.
Who knew Winston Churchill?
Yeah, as it turns out, a few people.
Yes, awesome. Yes, Winston Churchill was an interesting guy, and certainly I wrote the last podcast we did. We actually referenced the incredibly difficult history final that Tim and I took, and one of the essays I wrote in that final was on Winston Churchill. So
it was also a shameless self-promoter, but it kind of comes with the par for the course with a politician.
Yeah, except for James A. Garfield.
That's right.
Okay. I've got another fact here that I found this the other day, and I thought it was. This is one of the facts that I found incredibly important that I feel like when I tell other people, they're going to tell me that it's not, but I thought it was really cool. The way that our brain handles the number 4 and below is it's got a separate way of handling numbers 4 and down than it has of processing numbers 5 and higher. So essentially what that means, so if you glance quickly at something and look away, and then somebody asks you how many cookies were there, if the number is 4 or fewer, you will know it immediately. And if it's higher than 4, it takes you longer. It takes you more mental load. And I guess scientists have known this for a long time, that our brain, neuroscientists have known this for a long time, that the brain processes these numbers differently, but it wasn't yet clear. It says, until now, it wasn't clear if this was really evidence of 2 discrete neural mechanisms. But it is now. The testing that they've done, the research that they've done has demonstrated that the way that the neurons get fired for numbers 4 and fewer, there's an inhibition, like your brain inhibits the neurons, the other number neurons from firing if it's 4 or lower. Like when you see 7 of something and you look at and you try to count it, the neurons in your brain for like 8 and 6 are also firing. They're just not firing as strongly as 7. When numbers 4 and down, 3 is not firing and 5 is not firing. Like 4 are the only neurons that fire when you see 4 or 3 or 2. And so your brain has a different way. It can inhibit the other neurons from even becoming activated, which makes you 100% certain that you have the number correct, which you don't get from from higher numbers, because your brain is allowing other neurons to get excited. And so I thought that was incredibly interesting. And I have 5 children, which makes this challenging.
Yeah, you don't know how many are around. That's
I just never know. I can never know. 4, 6, who knows?
I just checked for myself, Carl. For me, it's actually 3 and under.
Well, that does make some sense, actually. It does actually write you into the study as an exception, but the exception makes the rule.
The exception that proves the rule. That's my life's purpose.
Anyway, I found this neural mechanism differentiating between 4 and 5 pretty cool. So hope that was useful for someone. Tim?
Yeah, that's here.
Do you have another fact?
Oh, another fact. Yes, I do. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the least known amphibian. And so there's so many cool amphibians out there, right? Frogs, toads, salamanders, axolotls. Those are really cool.
That's not even a real thing.
Yeah, you're right. It's a mythical, magical creature.
I think those exist in Lord of the Rings.
Gimli carried his axolotl.
Yeah. Well, he axed a lot, so he was an axolotl.
This is the type of banter our podcast has really been needing.
That's right. That people
That's
just
correct.
lap up.
Yes, they love it. The masses love it.
So the amphibian that I'm talking about is called a Sicilian. It's spelled, let me get the spelling right, Caecilian. And they're these crazy amphibians. They're legless, like a snake, they have no legs. And their bodies are segmented, they look like giant earthworms, actually. But they're these legless, ground-dwelling, earthwormy amphibians, and they're actually amphibians, and they're super cool. So you should look them up and learn all about them. But yeah, they have a few cool features. One, they I think it's because of how their habitat and whatever. But when their young are born, they will stay with I guess the mother stays with them, and she actually produces a kind of milk that it's not amphibian, it's not mammal milk, but there's a milky substance to feed them, and she also sheds her outermost skin, and their offspring will eat that to grow. So anyways, just like, wow, who knew?
Interesting. Tim, you do seem to have a lot of like animal facts.
I love animal facts. I'm always watching when Bethany and I do have like streaming services or whatever, I'll always be like watching the David Attenborough stuff, and she's like, oh, Tim can watch something else, but it's nature's amazing. So,
yeah, my wife loves any of the big cat documentaries.
Oh yeah,
she's all about those. So of course, then if we like, she likes documentaries, but then she'll fall asleep, and then I'm just left watching a documentary. Sometimes it's not what I want to watch. So
when my wife and I were dating, we watched a Planet Earth, like one of the Planet Earth documentaries. It was super cool. Luckily, she did fall asleep because it was the part where the killer whales attack and kill the baby whale, which is the most horrifying thing you've ever seen.
Oh, poor baby whale.
Oh yeah, it was really brutal.
Yes. Okay. Well, moving away from brutality to animals, Tim. We talked about losing us listeners.
That's right.
Which, by the way, parenthetically, my wife got me a new camera, a new webcam. The last time I got a new webcam was before the turn of the last decade, I think.
Oh.
So I think my last one was made like 2009. So this one's a lot nicer. What?
That's a wild and fun fact.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, it is. The for the 5 people that watch us on YouTube, which by the way is a huge disparity. We have a lot of listeners on Spotify, like 15,000 people that routinely listen to us on Spotify, and like 5 on YouTube. I mean, what is going on? I think it's my face.
I was going to say
it's because nobody watches a podcast. It's the wrong verb. We've gone into
people
this.
Listen to books. So.
No.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true.
If
okay.
you watched us though, we would get a lot more critical feedback. Like, you guys, please do something about your faces.
That's true, but to be fair, I'm the only one that really routinely does the video, and so it would really the feedback would be, please do something about your face, not faces.
That's right.
Wear a mask, please. Okay, which would be a way to get more viewers, I think. My next fact is one. This is. Well, it is a fact. I'm sticking with fact. Okay, I was doing research into intellectual humility, which, by the way, I didn't even know existed. I'm trying to remember how I found this. I somehow found this.
Arrogant.
Sounds fitting for us. We pretend to be laymen, but never mind.
Yeah. Well, intellectual humility, I think, is like, it's wonderful. And I've never known it had a specific name, but the more I started reading about it, I was like, yeah, this is really what I like. And this is kind of the premise of the whole podcast, is that, you want the key facts about intellectual humility right here. Involves awareness of limitations, openness to new ideas, and the willingness to revise beliefs, improves tolerance toward differing viewpoints, and enhances relationships, and facilitates personal growth, authenticity, and a more accurate self-view.
Yeah, well, let me explain to you why your characterization of intellectual humility is completely wrong. I will hear no arguments otherwise.
Well, some of us resonate with this more strongly than others.
The frustrating thing about intellectual humility is the more you learn about it, the less confident you can feel about what you know about it.
It does talk about the fact that humility in general, so often humility we kind of view kind of more in a religious light, but this is more along the lines of sociology research. This is the idea that it goes beyond any type of religious boundaries to just a general mindset. So those of you that are not religious that listen to our podcast are, hopefully you should be able to connect with everything, the same way that religious people do, along the lines of these things that I just read, awareness of limitations, openness to new ideas, willingness to revise beliefs. These are good things for a society. And so what I didn't know, so the fact here is that there is actual research being done into this. And that, I didn't even know. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Sociologists, and I don't know.
I feel like part of this requires a kind of, it is social, like there's a certain empathy, because what that intellectual humility is recognizing that the other people in the room may have things that you don't have, or may have understanding that you don't have. So if I lack intellectual humility, kind of what I do is I don't I don't respect my the others around me as much, right? And so it's a kind of lack of empathy of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is something that they're doing research into it, and it's just demonstrating that that this is something that builds societal bridges. Obviously, the whole idea, but it's also, the research is demonstrating that it can be something that you can achieve. Like, it's not just genetically the case. It's something that people can, that this type of humility can be cultivated and encouraged, and societies can, become more intellectually humble, which then builds a society. So that's what was super exciting to me, is that fact, that research that's being done into humility cultivation is promising, and that, I feel like, 100 years ago it was the case that the layman was intellectually humble, and I'm afraid that these days the layman is becoming less intellectually humble. So I'd like to encourage the idea of being willing
that's
to
why
revise.
we're here, to intellectually humble people.
I've always found it my role in life to humble people.
I feel like there's a million movies about this topic. You think, standard arrogant young person, needs training from older, wiser person, acquires intellectual humility,
Yes, exactly. Batman Begins.
Yeah, what?
Karate Kid.
I don't know. Guess he learning. I don't know. Anyway, I was going to read it says empirical interest in virtues and their benefits have increased in recent years. So this is not just me thinking about it. This is one of the studies I was looking into. It says it would test the efficiency of a workbook intervention to promote humility. So this is a particular methodology to promote humility. And our findings demonstrate the efficacy of the intervention with religious and non-religious individuals. So this spans all gaps. You can inculcate the idea of intellectual humility, and it has benefits. So
inculcate.
That's it.
Did you say with a workbook?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Wow. Please complete the following exercises to acquire intellectual humility.
That is awesome.
I guess
it's
a good workbook. There's stories and stuff.
Okay. Exactly. Okay, Tim.
Yes.
Do you have any more facts? I have one more.
One more fact.
Okay.
This is, and this may surprise people, actually. So it turned out they've done some studies on this, and 1 is the loneliest number.
Okay.
My research consisted of listening to a Three Dog Night song.
Yeah.
Oh my
Isn't
gosh.
that song like 20 years old now?
Oh, 20, is that it?
Sorry.
I think it's more than that.
Yeah, never mind. Wrong.
But I actually have no more interesting facts. But
Okay, that does not surprise me. Okay.
That's my interesting fact.
I've got one more, and then we'll wrap the podcast with a quote from Mark Twain, which is worth sticking around for.
Ooh.
Okay. The last fact is, once again, these are things that, we all go around, sometimes looking up information, and some of it being more or less interesting. We obviously try to accumulate interesting facts for this podcast. We do these fact podcasts every once in a while, but this one I thought was something that we've all wondered many of us have looked up and then immediately forgotten. But I looked into it recently, and this is the tax burden by state. So this is mostly interesting to our U.S.-based audience. That I didn't look up tax burden by country. I'm sure that's something I could look up as well, but I'm not currently interested in moving out of the country. So I'm actually not interested in moving at all. But I live in California, okay? A lot of people give us a hard time that we have incredibly high taxes. And I won't necessarily disagree, but on the overall tax burden list, California is number 12. So,
Wow.
yeah, how about them apples? We are at a total tax burden of 8.89%. Now, a couple things to take in consideration. I believe that California does have the highest income tax rate in the country, but it's a graduated income tax, meaning you're only paying that top rate for income over, it might even be over $1 million, but it's something along those lines. It's not relevant to most people. I get that millionaires, that would be pretty infuriating, but for the vast majority of Californians, it's not relevant. You don't pay anywhere near that. We have our property taxes are pretty in line with a lot of other states. They're higher as a total dollar amount because California property is worth a lot. But as far as percentage goes, it's not really out of line. And so our overall tax burden, like I said, number 12. New York, we have a lot of people listen to us in New York. You guys pay through the nose. And I guess I'm not really telling you anything new, but if those of you out there that are considering moving to New York, just beware that you have a lot of tax burden coming. Hawaii is number 2. Maine is number 3. And that one's surprising, right? Like, why? There's not even, like, what are they taxing? The moose?
Ouch, Mainers.
There's not many people on Maine.
Maine is a great place, I just have to say.
Have you been to Maine?
I have been.
Really?
Yes. It's it was a lovely place, beautiful forest and coast. We went to this great hot dog shack where they don't serve hot dogs with mustard if you're 16 or older, which is very sensible. Oh, excuse me, don't serve hot dogs with ketchup if you're 16 or older. And I asked the lady and I said, why don't you serve hot dogs with ketchup if you're 6-year-old? She said, because then you need to grow up. And, anyways, so lots of respect for Maine.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Okay, I don't know much about Maine. I just know that its tax burden is pretty high, which though another state that I used to live in, Illinois, I've always wondered why Illinois' taxes are so high. And a lot of it's property tax, but like Illinois, there are parts of Illinois that are nice, but it's so cold in the northern part of the state.
Compliment.
Well, the northern part is the northern part. There's more than just the northern part.
But there isn't really.
Boy.
I mean, it's something like 80% of the population of Illinois is in the top like 50 miles of the state or something.
Hey,
so.
Mr. doesn't live in coastal California. Everyone's saying that about.
Yes. Well, I live in Southern California as well, where we have a highly concentrated population. So, okay. Anyway, but if you're wondering where before we jump off here, the lowest states, if you're wondering, okay, how can I evade taxes, which I know you all are, Alaska, number 50, lowest tax burden of all the states, 5%. So,
wow.
Delaware before that. So 49 is Delaware, 48 is New Hampshire, 47 is Tennessee. So those are some of the options. As far as low tax burden states. So we're not yet in tax season, but we are in a new year. And so you are already thinking about what your next year's tax returns or tax burden might be. So that's something to consider. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this podcast. Matt, did you have any final thoughts?
No, I think this was fact-based and intuitive. I mean, informative.
Was there enough banter, or was there insufficient banter? That's the question.
Adequate banter.
All right. we're going to have a whole slate of new guests this year. I've already started lining some of those up. So we're looking forward to getting some more insight into non-layman insight into topics that the layman might be interested in. So look for those coming down the pipe, and then we'll also have Tim do whatever Tim does.
You're going to love it.
As they all do. All right. Well, thanks. We'll be back in the next podcast.